Right now on Morning News Now, buyout blocked. A federal judge pausing the Trump administration's plan to slash the federal workforce. The criticism growing over downsizing efforts led by billionaire Elon Musk.
What we are seeing unfold is an unlawful power grab by a unelected and unaccountable billionaire puppet master.
Now, questions about what happens to tens of thousands of employees who accepted a buyout and if the plan is even legal. We have team coverage. Also this morning, new safety precautions at Washington's Reagan National Airport after last week's deadly mid-air collision between an American Airlines jet and a Black Hawk helicopter. And new clues about what may have led to the tragedy. We're going to bring you the latest. Plus, a late-season surge of the flu spreading through classrooms across the country. More on the strain that's shutting down schools and what you can do to keep your family healthy. And countdown to kickoff, excitement growing in New Orleans with Super Bowl 59 now just 2 days away. The Chiefs and Eagles gearing up for their second Super Bowl showdown in 3 years. We're going to take you to the Big Easy ahead of the big game. You haven't made your plans yet. You got plenty of time. Figure out the menu.
I was just going to say that. That is my plan. All I'm thinking about are the patty melt sliders I'm going to make. That's what I'm most excited about.
There we go. And she'll be giving you the recipe
Yes.
later in the show. Good to have you with us on a Friday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers.
We are going to begin this hour with President Trump's agenda hitting some legal roadblocks. Multiple judges are stepping in to block some of the administration's efforts on everything from ending birthright citizenship to drastically downsizing the federal workforce. Today, millions of workers are facing uncertainty. A judge in Boston halted last night's deadline for a mass buyout program. The package, which offers employees pay and benefits in exchange for quitting their jobs, is now on hold pending a hearing on Monday.
A senior administration official tells NBC News more than 60,000 workers have already accepted the deal. Democrats argue that that money, though, is not guaranteed.
My fear is these folks are going to get scammed and then be the first to be fired because they've raised their hands.
It comes as we learn more about plans to gut two government agencies. Sources familiar with the plans tell us the U.S. Agency of International Development will go from having over 5,000 employees down to just 290 workers. Meanwhile, employees at the General Services Administration, they manage federal buildings and properties. They were told they will face a, quote, substantial staff reduction. To break this all down, we have NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, also our White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist in Washington, who we will kick things off with. Aaron, good morning. So with this deadline for this federal buyout package now on pause, was supposed to be last night at midnight, what happens next and what is the administration saying?
So, Savannah, there's still a lot of confusion when we've talked to some employees, federal government employees, about this buyout program, this deferred resignation, as the government is calling it. They're still confused about what exactly will stick for them. At the same time, we've now seen more than 24 lawsuits filed against the Trump administration for various executive orders and executive actions and memos that have been signed by the president in the few weeks that he's been in office. In this particular case with this buyout program, an employee union for federal workers has sued the administration, saying that this buyout program violates federal law and that the president doesn't have the legal authority to offer this sort of a program. And so that's what's led to this court pause, this judge-imposed pause on that buyout program that should have expired last night. The administration sees this as an extension of the buyout program, more time for more people to opt into it. I want you to hear how the White House press secretary talked about this program from the White House yesterday.
If they don't want to show up to the office, if they want to rip the American people off, then they're welcome to take this buyout, and we'll find highly competent individuals who want to fill these roles.
She went on to say that we are grateful to the judge for extending the deadline for this program. They see it as Monday now being an opportunity for more people to buy in, guys.
So, Aaron, last night we learned the president signed more executive orders behind closed doors. One of them focuses on sanctions against the International Criminal Court. The other has to do with what the president calls anti-Christian bias. Tell us more about these.
Well, let's start with the ICC. Those sanctions against some officials at the ICC and their family members, these are financial sanctions. These are visa restrictions on their travel. You might remember that last year, the ICC issued a warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. And President Trump, in signing this executive order, said that the court has targeted the United States and Israel unfairly. And as a result, he's now issuing these sanctions against the ICC. Of course, the ICC condemned this move by President Trump. And we should also point out, guys, that neither the United States nor Israel are signatories to the ICC's authority, and so they don't recognize it as being a lawful court.
Aaron, also before we go, let's talk about some confirmations here. The Senate voted along party lines, much like we've seen, to confirm Russell Vought as the next head of the White House Office of Management and Budget. Democrats unified against his nomination. This is someone who was one of the architects of Project 2025. So that's been described as sort of this blueprint for President Trump's second term, though he's distanced himself from it. But there's a lot of controversy here. What do we know about Vought and how he's expected to approach this role?
Well, we saw a dramatic vote in the Senate play out yesterday where you had Democrats, all of them standing up as the roll call was being done for this vote, trying to make speeches, which is not allowed during a vote of this nature. But they wanted to log their objections to Russell Vought becoming the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He has said in the past that he believes the director could play a powerful role in curbing spending of the federal government. He also has said in a questionnaire that was a part of the confirmation process that he believes the 2020 election was rigged. And so that gives some Democrats pause, and they are concerned that he would ignore the law in some cases and that he would cut funding to programs that actually help people. Republicans have said they believe he'll restore fiscal sanity to the federal government. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Aaron, we appreciate you kicking us off this hour. Thank you.
Let's get more analysis on what we heard from Aaron moments ago about that move by a federal judge in Boston to temporarily halt the president's government employee buyout program. NBC News analyst, legal analyst, Danny Ceballos is here. Do we know what the judge's reasoning was behind the temporary injunction right now?
Yes, it's really as simple as let's just wait. Let's get some more briefing in on the issue. Sometimes judges issue stays, but for a different reason, because they conclude that the one side is likely to win on the merits. That's not really what's happening here. This is more of just we need a couple days for everyone to get their briefing in. I've been looking on Pacer. There are documents filed by the dozens every day. This case has only been around for a couple days. So this case is moving very quickly. This really is just a pause without any kind of say or passing on the merits themselves.
Danny, from the perspective of the union that filed this lawsuit, what are they going to be arguing Monday?
A couple different things, but the main thrust is really twofold. It's that the Administrative Procedures Act bars this action because it's arbitrary and capricious. This is often a long shot argument, but they might have a case here because is there anything that feels more arbitrary or really random than this announcement, this rollout, where there are just so many questions that are unanswered. And I think OPM doesn't really know the answers to all of the questions. The second argument is what's called the Anti-Deficiency Act. And the argument there is that the government can't make these promises to people if the appropriations period ends March 15th or 14th. How can they make these promises out into the future beyond March 14th? Now, the administration's argument is, hey, people hire federal employees all the time beyond an appropriations period. We're basically just asking people to not work at all.
So with employees right now, there's just a lot of worry. People are wondering, do I take the buyout? If I take the buyout, will I actually get paid? If I don't take the buyout, am I just going to get fired a few weeks or months from now? So with all that in mind, are there other legal avenues for folks right now? Is this sort of legal action happening right now the main point? What are the possible scenarios?
Yeah, I'm also glad you bring that up because one of the administration's arguments is the reason they say this doesn't violate the Administrative Procedures Act is because it's not a final agency action. Now, listen to the reasoning here. They're saying we're not telling anyone to do anything. It's the decision they make. They're free to make a decision. But how free does that decision feel when you get an email that says, take this or your future is very uncertain. We have no idea what your job will be in the next few weeks. So that's going to be one of the arguments we're going to see front and center on Monday.
All right, Danny, thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. Well, President Trump is still facing backlash this morning after suggesting earlier this week that the U.S. should take over Gaza. The administration has attempted to walk back the proposal as the lives of the remaining Hamas hostages hang in the balance. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has the latest.
New fallout on President Trump's abrupt aspiration for an American-led renovation of Gaza.
We're going to take over that piece and we're going to develop it.
While the president did discuss the Middle East on camera, he chose to use social media to outline his controversial plan, declaring the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, so that the U.S. and development teams from all over the world could build what he called spectacular developments. Met with swift criticism from Republicans for leaving open the door to sending U.S. troops.
It would seem to me to be an inappropriate use of U.S. troops.
The president writing, no soldiers by the U.S. would be needed.
He will not be sending boots on the ground. He also has made it clear that American taxpayers will not be funding this effort.
The suggestion of U.S. troops also rejected by visiting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Mr. Netanyahu, do you think U.S. troops are needed in Gaza?
Are we in?
To make this feasible?
No.
But the president's Gaza plan dismissed by many Middle East countries who insist Palestinians should be able to remain in Gaza. The president acknowledged the fragile ceasefire deal with Hamas to release hostages.
We have more hostages to come, and we hope they live up to their word.
An emotional Aviva Siegel, a former hostage, just welcomed home her American husband, Keith.
It's difficult for me to think that he was there so many days without me. And there were so many moments that he needed me to be with him, and I wasn't there.
President Trump will get a chance to meet face-to-face with one of the regional leaders who has rejected his Gaza plan. Jordan's King Abdullah is due here next week.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you.
President Trump is starting to deliver on his campaign promise to carry out mass deportations. ICE officers are making hundreds of arrests a day all across the country. NBC's David Noriega got a look at how some of those raids are playing out in the community of Aurora, Colorado, where gang members from Venezuela are a primary target, but law-abiding citizens are fearful too.
ICE and other federal agencies conducting sweeps on multiple locations in Denver and Aurora, Colorado, the latest in Trump's nationwide immigration crackdown.
We're here today to conduct an at-large enforcement operation looking for Tren de Agua, the gang members here from Venezuela.
A show of force, with dozens of officers descending on apartment buildings, but staying mostly outside people's homes.
They banged on the door, opened the door, and they were like knee-deep in front of my door. And they were asking me if I was American or if I was legal.
Residents telling NBC News they stayed inside, stayed quiet, and were not served warrants. The threat of these types of sweeps has had Venezuelans in Aurora on edge for weeks. The biggest question on their minds, will authorities distinguish between law-abiding immigrants and those with criminal records?
Cuando hacen la barriada, caen inocentes, como pueden caer otros que son culpables.
Defiendo a mis paisanos hasta los últimos. Si hay uno que sí deberían de ser deportados.
Aurora has been in Trump's sights since August, when this viral video of armed men, alleged by law enforcement to be members of Tren de Agua, led the then presidential candidate to promise the city would be among the first to see mass deportations.
Multiple apartment complexes have been taken over by the savage Venezuela prison gang known as Tren de Agua.
City officials say gang activity is limited to a few individuals. Migrants themselves say the truth is somewhere in between.
The presence of the Tren de Agua gang here in Aurora has, on the one hand, been greatly exaggerated. But on the other hand, it's been minimized beyond even what many Venezuelan migrants here would agree with.
Venezuelans living in Aurora tell NBC News that for months, people they perceive to be gang members have been harassing and at times extorting their fellow Venezuelans. Jeanette Rodriguez came to Aurora from Venezuela 30 years ago. She's a deputy with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department, as well as an associate pastor in her church and a community leader.
Both things are true. We have a lot of families that came here to find a better life, but you also have people who came here that have an agenda, that are career criminals.
Rodriguez says these criminal actors target not Americans, but fellow Venezuelans, who they know are vulnerable and unlikely to report the crime.
These organizations like Tren de Agua, they victimize their own people.
The Trump administration's large-scale roundups using DEA, FBI, and other agencies to boost the ranks of ICE substantially raised immigration arrests. Early data shared by ICE showing 1 week of arrests at more than double the most recent daily averages under President Biden. A DHS official telling NBC News that ICE made 840 arrests Wednesday nationwide, about 2/3 with criminal convictions or pending charges. The others were, quote, other immigration violators. In advance of the Colorado raids, ICE said it was targeting over 100 members of Tren de Aragua, but did not respond when NBC News asked how many people were arrested here or how many had proven gang ties. Harrison, the barber, was not among those arrested.
Pues nosotros aquí somos prestados también. Nosotros no quisiéramos estar aquí, pero la situación del país que se está viviendo nos hizo migrar, no porque nosotros quisimos.
David Noriega, NBC News.
In the wake of last week's mid-air collision between a passenger jet and a Black Hawk helicopter, the FAA is taking steps to temporarily reduce air traffic at Washington's Reagan National Airport. At the same time, President Trump wants to explore revamping the nation's antiquated air traffic control system, and as Secretary of Transportation says Elon Musk might be able to help. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more.
8 days after that mid-air crash over the Potomac,
rescuers requesting permission to search the shorelines for debris.
Recovery teams raised the Army helicopter from the river, critical to the investigation. Investigators believe it was flying above its designated altitude before the crash. With 2 runways out of service, the FAA has notified airlines that it's cutting the number of arrivals from 28 to 26 per hour at Reagan National, with investigators concerned for air traffic controllers, who have an increased level of stress while also having a front-row view of the accident recovery. President Trump suggested the nation's antiquated ATC system played a role in the accident.
We should have had better equipment. We don't. We have obsolete equipment.
The new Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy,
I had a conversation with Elon Musk yesterday,
says Elon Musk will help overhaul air traffic control, which the FAA has spent years trying to upgrade, but without full congressional funding.
If Elon Musk or anyone else can provide great ideas, I mean, they are certainly on the cutting edge of technology, then I think that's great.
But Democrats are concerned about Elon Musk's promise of rapid safety upgrades, noting the FAA oversees Musk's SpaceX rocket launches.
It's a clear conflict of interest, and Secretary Duffy should make sure that Mr. Musk is not part of the FAA air transportation system.
Meanwhile, praise for new D.C. firefighter Sean Wathan, a Marine veteran who stood silent guard for hours by the remains of Army Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara, lost in the crash, while firefighters saluted flight attendant Ian Epstein, his remains brought home to Charlotte. One more note, the NTSB now says it appears likely that the helicopter crew was in fact wearing night vision goggles at the time of the crash. They were on a nighttime military mission, which included wearing goggles. We don't know what type of goggle, and we don't know whether they would have aided the pilots or made it more difficult to see an oncoming regional jet over the river. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
It is Friday, time now for your morning News Now forecast.
Meteorologist Denise Isaac is back with us for a check at your weekend radar. Denise, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Well, today we are tracking some light snow showers moving across the Great Lakes, but most of the nation is fairly quiet. Though you do see Billings, Montana, some snow falling across the northern Rockies. That will be our next big storm system that will bring snow across the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and to the Northeast Saturday into Sunday. So as we take a look here, 42 million people will be impacted by winter weather advisories, winter storm watch, and the big winner will really be the Northeast. So first, let's take a look at how this system evolved. It will move through Saturday afternoon across the Ohio Valley, bringing some icy conditions from Cincinnati all the way into Pennsylvania. And this is the same area that got to see the ice yesterday. So pretty much, we don't have a lot of days to just take a break. New York, Boston, you'll be seeing this system Saturday night into Sunday morning, but it's a quick mover. It'll be out of here by Sunday evening. As far as snowfall amounts, it drops quite a bit. 5 to 9 inches from Boston to Worcester, as well as southern New Hampshire, while locally in southern Connecticut, places like Greenwich could pick up locally 8 inches of snow. As far as ice accumulations, here we go. Hagerstown, Maryland, we could get at least 0.10 of an inch of ice, which will mean treacherous driving conditions Saturday night into Sunday. So while we're tracking this area of low pressure moving across the middle of the country Saturday, the south stays fairly warm with temperatures in the 80s. On Sunday, that morning, snow in the northeast. That system will pull away by the afternoon. Temperatures will be cooling down in the Midwest. And New Orleans, 79 degrees for that Super Bowl Sunday under sunny skies. So great weather for football. Active weather pattern continues next week because by Monday night, we are tracking a new area of low pressure that will bring snow from Minneapolis down towards Wichita. This time around, we will have enough colder air that we could see the snow dropping all the way into places like Cincinnati as well as Louisville, and then more snow expected for that I-95 corridor from New York all the way into Boston. The snowfall potential from this third system in less than 10 days will bring anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 9 inches of snow possible from D.C. up into New York, but it's too early right now to pinpoint the exact details as to how much, because it will all depend on the track of the area of low pressure. Back to you.
All right, Denise, thank you so much.
We got much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, blue sky's the limit, the alternative to X that's exploding in popularity, and why the CEO says the mission is to give users more control.
Up first after the break, Super Bowl security. We're going to take you to New Orleans, where officials are working to keep people safe during the big game. Stay with us. Welcome back. A federal judge sentenced the former interpreter for LA Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani. He'll spend nearly 5 years in prison for stealing millions from Ohtani to cover gambling debts. The exact sentence for Ipe Mizuhara, 57 months in prison. The former baseball interpreter was also ordered to pay more than $18 million in restitution, with the majority of that going to Ohtani. You might remember Mizuhara pleaded guilty last year to bank and tax fraud for stealing millions of dollars from Ohtani. Mizuhara who was born in Japan but moved to the U.S. as a child, could also face deportation after finishing his prison sentence.
Well, Super Bowl Sunday in New Orleans, of course, just days away now. Well, with tens of thousands of fans packing the Superdome, the game will kick off in a city that was rocked by a deadly terrorist attack just weeks ago. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has more on what authorities have planned to keep people safe.
While tens of millions are glued to their TVs on Super Bowl Sunday, federal agents will be circling above New Orleans and along the Mississippi River. In the French Quarter, heavily armed National Guardsmen patrolling on foot. In all, nearly 3,000 law enforcement personnel will be spread out across the city.
So they know where the crowds are, where the crowds aren't, and if anything happens that changes that scenario, then they'll be able to identify that.
Beyond surveillance, these federal agents will also be ready to respond if someone violates game day flight restrictions.
On the water, boat crews watching for unusual traffic.
We're also going to be a response force for any sort of safety emergencies.
At the Superdome, canines will sweep row by row.
We're very excited about this weekend, and we are really quite prepared.
But that planning came under renewed scrutiny after a terrorist barreled down Bourbon Street, killing 14 people here New Year's Day.
I don't know that we've had a major change because the plan for Super Bowl has been in place, working on that plan for 18 months.
That's not redirected by New Year's Day.
No. We actually take our lead mainly from NFL security.
Highly visible security reassuring fans like Twyla Moore, who says she considered canceling her trip after the New Year's attack.
How are you feeling now?
Oh, safe. I feel like this is the safest place in America right now.
And the Secret Service says on Sunday, President Trump will be the first sitting American president to attend a Super Bowl. New Orleans police says that means even more security.
Let's bring in NBC News law enforcement analyst and former Secret Service special agent Evie Pampouras for more on the security plans for this Sunday. Evie, always great to have you with us. Thanks for being here. Okay, so now it's announced, as Jesse just mentioned, President Trump attending the game. So if we could have you sort of step back into your old job. Obviously, this is a tightly secured event, but it's also one attended by so many people, so many ways in and out. If you were assigned to be protecting the president at something like this, where would you even begin?
Okay, first I want to say this is probably, that day is going to be, New Orleans is going to be the safest place on earth to be. So with everything that's being thrown. So you've got kind of two security plans, the security plan for the public, which that I think is the most complex, and the security plan for the President of the United States. I think it's going to flow seamlessly simply because there's already really these vast security measures in place. Let's look at, we've got FAA being involved, no fly zone, which means no planes in the air, no drones. In fact, drones are being grounded days in advance. You're looking at tactical elements on the ground. So Homeland Security is involved. U.S. Secret Service is involved anyway because it's an NSSE event, right? Which means all the assets are given in. You've got a massive amount of law enforcement, officers and law enforcement in uniforms, in addition to law enforcement in just plain clothes blending in. You're looking at, I think, about 2,000 uniforms is what I'm hearing on the ground. Then you have tactical elements, street closures. So you've got all these things. As far as securing the stadium itself, usually starts a couple of days in advance. You empty out the area and you actually have the military, you have bomb dogs, K-9 going through, and they sweep the interior of the event. It takes time because you're looking at tens of thousands of seats. Once that's cleaned out, then you start to harden up and put those elements in. The stadium itself, I don't want to say it's easy to secure. It's the simplest because you funnel people in through certain doorways. Once they're in, they're swept, they're clean. People should know, don't bring a lot of stuff with you. Keep light bags, clear plastic. Now, for the President of the United States, the difference is going to be he's actually coming into an already secure event. They're just going to create corridors for him. One, the roads. When the president travels, and if you've ever had him travel to your city, we've seen it here in New York, they shut down the roads. Roads get shut down, does create traffic, but they don't want traffic in or around that motorcade. That's really one of the most invasive elements you're going to see. But they'll bring him in, they'll bring him in through a secure loading dock or kind of back area that nobody's going to see. It's going to be tented or covered. You don't want people seeing how he moves in or out. And then putting him in a secure location within the stadium itself.
So we heard that the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, says no specific or credible threats aimed at the Super Bowl. We also just heard the police chief there say no real major changes since the Bourbon Street terror attack on New Year's. That's surprising to you to hear that? Or is this just a plan that's just been in the works for so long, they've been pushing forward with it?
Sounds odd to me to hear that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what exactly she's privileged to or not. To me, that seems very odd. And from the reporting that I have read from the federal side, after the New Orleans attack, they've made major changes. And we know this for a fact because they're actually bringing certain SWAT trucks to help stop and impede movement. They're putting blocks, barriers in Bourbon Street. They're securing all that area. So it's actually not accurate because they secured it very differently before the public areas from what they're doing now. They're bringing barriers. There's trucks lifting these concrete barriers, vehicles, everything's coming in. That, to me, doesn't sound accurate. Perhaps she's trying to say, look, we're securing it, but definitely think that given what happened, you also think about the parties, think about the gatherings. I'm not as concerned about the Super Bowl itself. I mean, there's even private security there. They're bringing everything. But you're thinking about people hanging out, people walking down the street. I always think large amounts of people, densely populated area, small area, prime target to do something. And you don't want to just think about shootings or knife attacks, not just bombs. I always would think chemical, biological attack, something very kind of simple to do and very dangerous. How do you mitigate that? So I think that there's so many elements here in place.
You may have just mentioned it, but what would be your biggest worry?
Chemical, biological attack, and I'll tell you why. You have to figure out what they're using. I remember when I went to chem bio training, we had that in the U.S. Secret Service, and they would teach us the different ways to attack. And different substances and chemicals do different things to the body, and you have to realize what somebody's exposed to, and then how do you treat it? And some of them you're not supposed to put water on anything. That can actually aggravate it. So to me, that's the worst. Also, if it's in the air, how do you do that? If it's on me, you can take me, rinse me off or decontaminate me. But if it's something you breathe, I think for me, those were probably the most difficult, the most confusing, especially if it's airborne.
Evie, always great to have you. A lot of talking
No,
about
bro, safest place in America. Safest place in America. Let's say that.
Go to the Super Bowl and enjoy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, marked absent, a late season flu surge shutting down schools across the country.
When we come back, we'll talk to our friend Dr. Kavita Patel about what you can do to keep your kids healthy. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back. A severe late season surge in the flu is sweeping across the country. With infection rates soaring, some schools and districts are turning back to their pandemic era playbooks. They're shifting to remote learning for days on end. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has more.
Across the country, classrooms sit empty, schools shut down, with administrators from Texas to Tennessee, Oklahoma to Ohio citing a surge in the flu. One district near Louisville going remote for 3 days, telling parents more than 1,700 students and 200 staff members were absent due to illness Monday. Photos showing masked maintenance workers deep cleaning classrooms near Cleveland.
Have you seen schools closed due to the flu before?
No. Outside Cincinnati, Superintendent Kelly Spivey shuttered Edgewood City schools for the week yesterday.
We're seeing the influenza strand A, we're seeing the RSV, pneumonia, strep throat.
All of it.
All of it, and at a high rate. COVID as well.
The CDC says at least 250,000 Americans have been hospitalized with the flu this season. 11,000 have died. This late season surge catching New Jersey mom of 3, Gabrielle Heimerling, off guard.
I am surprised that 2 of my kids went down that fast. We haven't had the flu in this house for years.
These numbers don't surprise you.
No.
Doctors at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus point out flu infections are still rebounding post-pandemic, while vaccination rates among kids fall, plummeting nearly 14% in 5 years.
We have to do better. And it's a hard time right now when it comes to vaccines. We know that, but we know they matter.
And unfortunately, experts say we're still looking at likely weeks, potentially up to a month of high flu activity before these numbers really start to come down. Back to you.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, good morning. So flu is a common illness this time of year, but what is it we're seeing now? Why are these infection rates especially high this season?
Yeah, Joe, I think what's unusual right now is we're seeing at least 41 states, basically the entire country, with kind of peak flu activity. Normally what we see is kind of a seasonal pattern. We do have that. It's still the winter. And we see it kind of in shifts in regions of the country. So the Midwest will get it, and then it'll dissipate. Then we'll see it in the West Coast, et cetera. Right now, it is everywhere. So it's definitely, people have asked me, is the virus different? Not different. It's just easy to give and get, and it's all over the country. And you heard a little bit about the decreased flu vaccine rates that are contributing to it, too.
As we heard there in Maggie's piece, Doctor, the number of kids getting the flu vaccine continues to decline. Obviously, that's been a conversation so much around vaccines generally, but what role does this play in the spike in cases that we're seeing? And remind us, whether it's kids or adults, there's still time to get the shot.
Yeah, there's still time. I'll start with that. 6 months or older does not matter, and it's one shot. So don't have to get confused about how many or when, and it's never too late. We're still in the thick of flu season, so getting the shot now is not too late. And you're right, that the vaccine rates have gone down, and that really leads, Savannah, to something that we call kind of decreased, like what we call herd immunity. And it's the concept that not just me getting vaccinated, but my neighbors getting vaccinated and the kids at my school getting vaccinated to help protect people who aren't vaccinated. So the more of us that are vaccinated, the better we can protect those who aren't. This year, the numbers are tilting the other way, where you have more in some pockets of the country that are not vaccinated. So you don't have this kind of neighborhood or community-wide protection. That's part of it. And just the fact that I think that it's so cold across the country, we've been reporting on this, and it's keeping people in closed spaces. So again, it's just easier to give and get.
And I bet if you talk to a lot of people of the flu right now or had it recently, they wish they would have gotten that shot. So what are some of the key symptoms you should look out for right now? And just what are the things parents and kids can do to best protect themselves?
Yeah, key symptoms. Look, some of the typical flu symptoms are feeling like those shakes and chills and muscle aches, like you worked out, but you didn't work out. And you might not have some of the other symptoms, but I'll just mention them because you can see GI symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea. There are other illnesses that cause that. So it's often just a reason to go get checked out. And then it can even just start with the sniffles. I've had patients who said, I just had a cold. That's all I had. And when we test them, they're flu positive. We've also had people that have had several different viruses after time. It can be flu negative in the beginning because you had a common cold. It's not the flu. And then about a week later, you're not getting better. And then come in, get tested, and it's often the flu. And don't forget, we have treatments for it. And then prevention is key. Masks work, washing your hands work. It's not too late to get that vaccine. And then if you're around someone that has symptoms, I also advise them to wash down surfaces. Flu virus is one of those that can stay sticky and alive for several hours on common shared.
Oh, interesting. All right, Dr. Kavita Patel, we appreciate you as always. Thank you. Now let's get to a concerning drug trend among young adults. It's called whippets. They are canisters of flavored nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, that some teens are using to get high. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro has more.
This was Jenna Campbell a little more than a year ago, relearning how to walk after she says her addiction to nitrous oxide, which she started using when she was 19, left her temporarily paralyzed.
I was using throughout the day 10 to 16 full tanks to where they would be empty.
Commonly known as whippets, the small cartridges, also used in culinary-grade whipped cream dispensers, have been around for years, as well as their abuse.
You get euphoric side effects, hallucinations sometimes. It can create oxygen deprivation to your brain.
But what's changed, experts say, is the way they're packaged and marketed.
It's being sold in containers with a much higher volume than usual little whippet containers, and they're also being sold with flavors.
25-year-old Campbell, now back on her feet, is warning of the drug's dangers and the way it's being sold.
They're all marketed as they're for making whipped cream, which is just not, that's not the case.
Poison Control says there was a 58% increase in reported intentional exposures from 2023 to 2024. A quick search online, and there are a variety of brands and countless flavors like cranberry mango, cookies and cream, and pink lemonade. NBC News reached out to several of the brands and did not hear back. Many of them state on the packaging the gas is meant for culinary use, sometimes even warning that it's not meant to be inhaled. But those warning labels didn't stop Campbell from using it on a daily basis or buying the tanks at her local gas station. Last year, Louisiana became the first state in the country to ban the sale of nitrous oxide in stores to the general public.
You can see the canister that's here before you. That would be over 22,000 servings of whipped cream if that's really what they wanted to do. But that's not what they're doing.
But the substance itself, which is also used as a medical sedative, hasn't been outlawed.
Nitrous oxide remains legal in the United States because there are so many legitimate uses that don't correlate to the abuse.
Campbell hoping her own story serves as a warning to others and puts pressure on the companies making the product. Valerie Castro, NBC News.
All right, coming up, a social media platform promising to put its users first.
When you show users that it's possible to have more control over your feed, other apps will follow on this.
When we come back, our conversation with the CEO of Bluesky about what makes this app different from X and others. This is Morning News Now. We're back with a platform that's seeing massive growth in the wake of the 2024 election. More than 30 million social media users are now looking to the sky, Bluesky, that is. They're fleeing what many consider to be toxic environments on other sites like X and Facebook. Bluesky, similar to those platforms, you can write short posts, add a photo or video, comment, like, repost. In fact, it looks an awful lot like old school Twitter, which makes sense. It started as a side project for Twitter's co-founder, Jack Dorsey, back in 2019. Dorsey is no longer involved with Bluesky, but his mission to create something different is still very much present. With Bluesky, you control your algorithm. It's also an open source network, so anyone can see how it's built or even build a new part of it themselves. And if someone creates a new social media app that interests you, well, you can just jump to that one. Keep your username, your posts, your friends, kind of like how you can take your cell phone number to another carrier. This week, I chatted with Bluesky CEO Jay Graber. She's young, in her early 30s, and hopes to keep the momentum going.
How is Bluesky different from all those other social media apps like X, like Facebook, like Instagram, especially when it comes to the algorithm?
We say it's like being able to choose your own adventure rather than just, looking at a channel which is already preset. The algorithm is going to show you what it's going to show you. You don't know what it's doing. You can go in there and choose your own timeline. So you can control your scroll. If you don't like what we're showing you, install a different timeline. And that means that the power for you is in your hands as a user.
Algorithms are a big deal right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of concern that companies are sort of throwing things at you that they want you to see, not necessarily what you want to see.
Yeah, that's why we think it's important to open up this piece of it, because your attention and how you spend your attention each day is really important to you. And so you want to be able to control what you're looking at. So you can decide, you know what, I've had enough of the news feed for the day. I'm going to go look at the cat feed. Or I don't like this algorithm. I'm going to try one that someone else built. Like my friend built this one. Like I trust them more than the developers of Bluesky.
And for more and more people, that's appealing. In October, just 4 months ago, Bluesky had about 12 million users. Today, more than 30 million.
Our goal is to make it within Bluesky easier to vote with your feet so that if you get tired of us, you can migrate off us more easily than having to make this massive coordinated campaign to get a new app trending and all go there at once.
Meta just made headlines announcing that Threads will now have custom feeds, just like you. When you heard that, what did you think? Do you feel like they're trying to follow what you're doing because they're seeing your success?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And when you show users that it's possible to have more control over your feed, other apps will follow on this. I think what they're doing is a weaker version of it. And so basically they're not opening up to allow anyone to choose their algorithm. They're just letting you kind of customize your interest set. It's still an improvement over not having any control over what you see.
Are you okay with Meta trying to do a little bit of what you're doing?
I think that I think competition is good in social, and moving the needle towards user choice is overall good. The established players have no reason to make anything better because you're trapped there until someone new comes along and says, hey, there's a better way we could be doing this.
The NFL is making headlines right now. Recently told the New England Patriots, you can't be on Bluesky. How do you feel about that? Are you working to try and change that?
Yeah, we'd like to change that, but also, our goals is to just build the best platform for as many people as possible and make sure that we're really delivering the value for everybody. And our goal is to try to win over the content creators and the players and the folks out there who want to be in a place where it's a healthier space for conversation.
So you hope the NFL changes its mind?
Yeah, I think we'll show the value of what we're doing, and we'd like to convince them to come on.
To folks who think no ads, I get to build my own algorithm, this sounds too good to be true, what would you say?
Come in and we're figuring out together. Come in and help build it with us. And if you're a user, come in and check it out.
So as you heard right there, no ads on Bluesky right now. Graber says she does want to keep it that way. So how would she keep that up and make money? Well, she says Bluesky does plan to launch a subscription option with premium features in the near future. But for those who don't want to pay, it will still be available for free.
Let's get you more financial headlines now. Amazon is projecting a pretty rocky sales forecast for the quarter.
CNBC's Silvana now has that and some other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning and happy Friday to you. So shares of Amazon are under pressure, and this following a mixed set of results last night. Amazon reporting better than expected earnings and sales in the fourth quarter, but is projecting sales this quarter below analyst estimates. Growth from its AWS cloud business coming in just shy of forecast. Now, Amazon will ramp up spending this year to $100 billion as it rushes to build more data centers and hardware to meet the incredible demand for AI. Tesla is hiking prices on the premium Model X SUV by $5,000, according to the company's website. The all-wheel drive version is now priced at just under $85,000, with the more premium Plaid version at just under $100,000. Now, the move effectively makes the Model X ineligible for a federal EV tax credit of $7,500, with the price limit being $80,000. Tesla hasn't commented on the price change. And Tinder is adding new categories to the Explore page to help you find like-minded dates. Now you can browse profiles in groups such as serious dater, long-term partner, and short-term fun. Now, Tinder notes you can only qualify for the serious dater category if you have a bio, upload at least 4 photos, and set your relationship goals to a long-term option, guys.
Get that conversation out of the way right away, all right?
Yeah, just please.
Savannah, thank you.
Avoid any awkwardness.
All right, coming up, countdown to the kickoff.
That is right. The Super Bowl is just 2 days away, and the Kansas City Chiefs are chasing history.
But can they pull off a three-peat in this 2023 rematch against the Eagles? We're going to chat with NBC sports legend Mike Tirico from the Big Easy next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back this morning. We are finally just 2 days away from Super Bowl 59, and this year's matchup is setting the stage for an unforgettable weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles return to the big game, looking to stop the Kansas City Chiefs from a historic three-peat victory in New Orleans. And oh my goodness, we're so lucky to have NBC Sports' Mike Tirico joining us for more on everything to look forward to this Sunday. Mike, good morning. We always love when you join us. Thanks for being here.
Happy Super Bowl Friday.
There
Glad
you
to be with you,
go.
Savannah.
I know, the eve of the big game. Mike, okay, so let's just look back to each team's playoff run and talk about the momentum that they say they bring into the Super Bowl. What do you think?
Well, Philadelphia, we saw it firsthand. We had their game against the Rams, and then they blew out Washington, their division rival in the NFC Championship game. So they've built a lot of momentum playing at home, a team that runs the ball very effectively. And when a running game gets synchronized, it's 5 offensive linemen or sometimes an extra tight end there as well, blocking for a running back. That's 6, 7 people working in harmony. That's hard to do over and over. But when you get rolling, it's hard to stop. And Philadelphia is rolling when it comes to that. On the other side with Kansas City, the advantage of being the best team in the AFC, they had a week off. They got a bye. It allowed them to get healthy. They really locked up their spot before the last couple of weeks of the regular season. So it's very rare to say a team comes in chasing a 3rd championship and is fresh. But you can say that about Kansas City. So both have momentum in different ways coming into this game.
Mike, we've talked so much about the Chiefs team specifically led by Patrick Mahomes and also head coach Andy Reid. With this potential three-peat, I mean, with that on the line, what type of game plan do you think we should expect from the Chiefs, like given the way those two kind of lead the team and how kind of creative they are and how it just seems like Mahomes knows how to win, period?
Exactly. He's like that one kid who was in the playground. Every time he was on a team, that team won, right? He just has that magic about him. And it's interesting that you say this, Savannah, because what is being talked about at the top line of this game, the history of trying to become the first team to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls in this Super Bowl era, which dates back to 1967, really goes hand in hand with how this team approaches it. They're not talking one bit about that. They're talking about this game, this moment. They've played Philadelphia. Andy Reid is the winningest coach in Philadelphia and Kansas City history. So they know that the team on the other side is a quality team. So their focus is really on this moment. And Mahomes and Reid ability to be comfortable in these moments, I think, just seeps through to the rest of the team.
That's a good way to put it. Mike, this is a rematch, of course, from Super Bowl 57 just 2 years ago. Let's talk about the Eagles, how they plan to try to stop the Chiefs this time around. And, of course, I feel like we can't have that conversation without talking about Saquon Barkley and the difference maker that he could be.
You're right on both accounts. Let's start with Saquon Barkley. As good a season as we've seen from an NFL running back when you combine his regular season and playoffs. We're likely to say that when this is all said and done. Terrific running back with the Giants, injured. Giants don't re-sign him. Philadelphia does. And they put a really, really special running back behind the best offensive line in the National Football League. Philadelphia has shared that title with Detroit over the last couple of years, and the combination's been magical. I think in this game, one of the keys is going to be how good is Philadelphia's quarterback. Jalen Hurts, people have said, can he do it in the big moments? I just think back to 2 years ago, that Super Bowl you just mentioned. He was sensational in that game. He had 1 turnover, and that cost them the game. It was a 7-point game. But if you go back and watch that game or read about that game, Jalen Hurts was fabulous. He was just as good as Patrick Mahomes. So I don't have any doubts in his ability, but I think his ability to make the big plays in the big moments will be what decides this football game.
Such great stories for both Hurts and Barkley. It's so cool to see them make it to this game. It seems like no matter what, even while we're all like, who's going to win, and everybody has their reasonings for why it's going to be one or the other, it's going to be an amazing game.
It has that feel to it, and I think, Savannah, a big part of that is both of these teams are used to the big stage. Sometimes you'll get a team that's new to the Super Bowl, players who haven't experienced it. And while that's true for some of the players on each side, Philadelphia plays in big games all the time, given the division they're in, the NFC East. Many of these players were on the field for the Super Bowl against Kansas City a couple of years ago. So these guys will not be overwhelmed by the moment. And for Kansas City, this is just an entry in their calendar. Oh, Super Bowl. Okay, what day is it? We're going to be there. And they're used to this at this point, 5 of the last 6. So I think the comfort will be will offset the big stage that this is on, the Superdome, a venue that over its 50 years has seen a lot of great NFL moments. And I think we'll have a terrific game in there again tomorrow, or Sunday, I should say.
And Mike, I understand you're not working. How are you watching?
I'm enjoying a couple of days in New Orleans. Then I'm going to join the 100 million Americans and put my feet up and eat and drink and enjoy the game. Sometimes it's fun to be a part of the game, but it's even more fun to just sit back and relax and enjoy it. So we have the game next year on NBC. So I'm going to take the opposite route this year and sit on the couch and enjoy it.
Well, you deserve it. Enjoy it every minute. Mike, thanks very much for joining us. We're lucky to get to talk to you right before it.
My pleasure, Savannah. Have a great weekend.
You too. See you soon. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Let's start with the good news. It's Friday. You made it to the end of the week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, a historic federal downsizing effort hitting a major legal snag this morning. A federal judge pressing pause on President Trump's sweeping buyout program for government workers until next week. It comes as the White House ramps up its pressure campaign, advising staffers to take the money and run or risk losing their jobs. We've got the latest from Washington. Meanwhile, wicked winter weather turning deadly this morning. Officials in Tennessee confirming at least 2 people were killed, several others injured after severe storms and even a possible tornado tore through the state last night. We're on the ground with new scenes of destruction. Also this morning, the Army Black Hawk helicopter at the center of that deadly D.C. mid-air collision finally pulled from the frigid waters of the Potomac. More on the next stage of that investigation as new questions swirl on Capitol Hill over safety at one of America's busiest airports. And are you ready for some football? Later in the hour, we're taking you down to New Orleans with an inside look at how the Big Easy is getting ready for the big game as we count down the hours to Super Bowl 59. A lot to look forward to this weekend. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to get started this hour with President Trump's buyout program for federal workers. It's now on pause. A judge is blocking the effort to radically reduce the federal workforce as employees argue it violates the law. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest.
Good morning to you. The pace and scope of the changes across the federal workforce is staggering. One longtime federal worker telling me it has been the worst couple weeks of their life. We are not faceless bureaucrats, this person said. We're your neighbors. And a judge will soon decide whether the Trump administration can push forward with its massive buyouts, even as the White House says it's cutting waste and is pushing workers to accept the deal. This morning, President Trump facing legal hurdles in his effort to reshape the government. Plans to shrink the federal workforce, give Elon Musk's team access to Treasury systems, and scale back U.S. foreign aid, all facing challenges. But the president is still plowing ahead.
We got rid of woke over the last 2 weeks.
A federal judge paused the White House's implementation of its buyout offer to all federal workers hours before the deadline, now delayed until Monday, after employee unions filed suit arguing it violates federal law. Still, the White House is urging workers to take the buyouts. A senior administration official tells NBC News more than 65,000 workers, or nearly 3% of the federal civilian workforce, have already accepted the deal. The administration is warning workers they could lose their jobs if they don't accept. The administration is also facing a lawsuit from employee unions over USAID, but moving forward rapidly to dismantle the agency that provides billions of dollars in humanitarian aid around the world.
We're catching them left and right. We're catching them.
According to two people familiar with the plans, President Trump is expected to slash the agency's ranks from more than 5,000 to fewer than 300 workers. Democrats saying pulling back aid from struggling countries makes America less safe.
China benefits. Russia benefits. Those that don't mean as well benefits.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is defending it.
The goal of our endeavor has always been to identify programs that work.
And the president's praising billionaire Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency's team for its efforts.
Elon Musk is helping us on it, and he's pretty good.
One other flashpoint, Doge's access to the Treasury Department's massive payment system that includes personal data. A Doge employee approved by a federal judge to access the system has resigned after the Wall Street Journal asked about his links to a deleted social media account that advocated for racism and eugenics. Other lawsuits against Doge's involvement with the system are still pending. The new plan will shrink the number of USAID staffers dedicated to serve the entire continent of Africa to just 12 people, 8 people for all of Asia, and the 600 current employees dedicated to Europe will be slashed to just 10. The unions filing suit against President Trump say his administration is responsible for causing a global humanitarian crisis, costing thousands of American jobs, and they argue only Congress can dissolve an agency. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. Well, now let's head to Tennessee, where officials are reporting that at least 2 people are dead and 3 others injured after a suspected tornado hit Morgan County yesterday. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now from Deer Lodge, Tennessee, with the very latest. Hi, Kathy. Good to see you. Good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, it was a day of wild weather all across the country, including right here in the South. We have made our way to Deer Lodge, Tennessee, roughly an hour outside of Knoxville, where a likely tornado touched down. You can see some of that damage behind me. Large toppled trees, power lines down, debris scattered everywhere. And this morning, officials confirming 2 fatalities, a mother and her daughter. This morning, millions waking up after a winter wallop, wreaking havoc from coast to coast. Storms shredding parts of the South and bringing fierce winds. A tornado touching down in western Kentucky, leaving a trail of damage and debris along roadways. While severe storms, flooding, and reports of a deadly twister hitting Tennessee. 2
people lost in rubble, 1 critically injured, and unknown injuries.
Authorities saying it caused property damage and loss of life.
Morgan County sustained some structure damage from high winds and possibly a tornado.
A high school basketball game evacuated as storms moved in.
We are going to have a tornado delay.
The Northeast also dealing with a stormy week. Residents digging out after rain and snow blanketed parts of Pennsylvania and Connecticut. This just as a new winter storm watch for multiple cities take effect for this weekend, while parts of California also recover from dramatic weather, with heavy rains in the northern part of the state, soaking the soil, causing landslides, and leading to dramatic rescues from flooding. Mother Nature continuing to pack a punch this winter. And back here in Morgan County, Tennessee, it is still very much an active scene. Crews are on the ground, still looking for survivors. Many are without power this morning. Officials will be out here all day, pretty much assessing the damage. Savannah?
All right, Kathy Park, thank you. Let's stay with that severe storm track and bring in meteorologist Denise Isaac. She joins us with the latest. Hey, Denise, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. So right now, the National Weather Service hasn't confirmed that a tornado touched down. They'll have to go down there and survey the damage, but certainly a lot of damage from the storms that rolled through the area yesterday. While today it's fairly quiet, it's the day to assess all the damage because we are tracking a big storm system that right now is starting to develop in the northern Rockies, dropping snow there in Billings, Montana, and that system will then drop into the southern plains, and that's why there's 42 million people that will be impacted by this next storm system. We have winter weather advisories in place across Minnesota as well as Wisconsin, and down towards Boston and Hartford, Connecticut, winter storm watches are already in place. So here we go. Tomorrow afternoon, this system will bring rain and heavy snow across portions of the Ohio Valley as well as the Midwest. Not only that, but the possibility for ice is also a possibility. So that will create some treacherous travel across the roads. And then by Sunday, this system pulls away fairly quickly, but it will be an impact to places like Boston where we could get 5 to 9 inches of snow from at least Saturday night into Sunday morning. Ice accumulation, the same area that picked up ice yesterday, will do so again. Hagerstown, Maryland, also Altoona, Pennsylvania. These are the areas more prone to see some of that ice accumulating, making it quite slippery on the roads. As far as snowfall amounts, as I mentioned, Boston 5 to 9. Some locally areas in southern Connecticut could pick up to 8 inches or a little bit more. So as we take a look at our weekend forecast, Saturday we're tracking that heavy snow from Minnesota into Detroit, the possibility for some afternoon ice across the Ohio Valley, and then that morning snow in the Northeast on Sunday. Sunday south towards New Orleans, looking good, 79 degrees, sunshine and warm. But then here we go again. By next Monday, we are tracking another area of low pressure. And this time around, there's enough colder air south that we could see snow from Kansas all the way into St. Louis, Cincinnati, and New York. Boston, again, we could get some snow out of this one. Savannah, back to you.
All right, Denise, thank you very much. Well, now to the latest on that deadly mid-air collision over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. that killed 67 people. The final pieces of wreckage from the Army Black Hawk helicopter have now been lifted out of the river. And this morning, we're learning that a critical safety system on the chopper was turned off at the time of the crash. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has the latest on this one for us. Ryan, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. And there are certainly questions continuing to swirl around traffic at Reagan National Airport and the altitude the Black Hawk was flying at the time of the crash. Now, recovery crews were able to lift a significant section of the chopper out of the water yesterday, but they are still in search of the right engine and the tail rotor. This all comes as the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board was on Capitol Hill. A little more than 1 week after an Army Black Hawk helicopter crashed into American Airlines Flight 5342 over the Potomac River, salvage crews lifted what is left of the chopper from the water. Jennifer Homendy, the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board, briefing members of Congress about the progress of the investigation. Senator Ted Cruz, who was at that briefing, revealing critical technology that would have allowed air traffic controllers to better track the movement of the chopper, was turned off at the time of the collision. The technology, known as Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, or ADSB, broadcasts an aircraft's position, altitude, and speed.
In this instance, this was a training mission, so there was no compelling national security reason for ADSB to be turned off.
Some changes are already being made while the investigation continues. The FAA notifying the airline companies that traffic at busy Reagan National Airport will be reduced by 2 flights an hour out of concern for air traffic controllers. While the FAA reviews other airports with high volumes of helicopter and airplane traffic nearby. The NTSB chair saying the FAA can make changes immediately as concerns pop up in their probe.
They can see it in real time and make safety change.
Meanwhile, President Trump suggesting the aviation system is outdated without providing many examples.
We should have had better equipment. We don't. We have obsolete equipment.
His Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, floating the idea of Elon Musk coming in to revamp air traffic control systems.
I had a conversation with Elon Musk yesterday.
And the NTSB chair called the system antiquated, did not rule out taking Musk's help.
Elon Musk or anyone else can provide great ideas. I mean, they are certainly on the cutting edge of technology. Then I think that's great.
All this as officials in Wichita, where the flight originated, make plans for a permanent memorial in honor of the victims and the precious lives cut short. And we're tracking potentially another air disaster this morning. A small Bering Air flight carrying 10 people on board a flight in Alaska went missing during a flight between 2 small towns over the western coast of that state. Now, the plane departed at around 2:40 local time, but it lost contact with the air traffic control office about 40 minutes later. That was just 10 minutes before its scheduled arrival about 12 miles offshore. Now, there were some weather conditions in the area, some poor visibility, snow and cold temperatures. But before the plane disappeared, the pilot told the air traffic control that he was entering a holding pattern while waiting to be cleared for the runway in order to land. Now, search crews are still looking for the plane. They have not had any success finding it or any of the people on board. Again, 10 people on board that flight in Alaska. Savannah?
All right, Brian Noble's a lot there for us. Thank you very much. Well, today, federal officials are expected to release all the redacted information from classified documents on 3 historic U.S. assassinations in the 1960s. That includes the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It was one of the dozens of executive orders Mr. Trump signed after his inauguration. NBC's Stephanie Gosk has the latest.
President Trump gave the intelligence agencies until today to come up with a plan to declassify the remaining sealed files in John F. Kennedy's assassination, promising, in his words, to give the Americans the truth after 6 decades of secrecy.
This morning, more than 60 years after President John F. Kennedy was assassinated riding in a presidential motorcade in Dallas, intelligence agencies are supposed to deliver a plan to the White House outlining the public release of the remaining files in the case.
I think there is definitely revelatory material in there.
Investigative journalist Jeff Morley is especially interested in information about a CIA agent who worked in Cuba. Testimony from another CIA official that remains heavily redacted, and letters Jackie Kennedy wrote to President Lyndon Johnson, along with 4 interviews she gave to a historian in 1964.
Jackie Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy are known to have privately not believed the official story of the assassination.
For decades, the sealed documents fueling conspiracy after conspiracy, even though the vast majority have long been public. Was the CIA somehow involved? Did Lee Harvey Oswald take his orders from a foreign government? Theories that are still believed by some to this day, even though multiple investigations and the Warren Commission concluded Oswald acted alone.
Everything will be revealed.
President Trump signed an executive order releasing the files on all 3 of the assassinations that rocked the country in the 1960s. President Kennedy, his brother Robert, and Martin Luther King Jr. But it is the shooting of JFK and speculation about what has yet to be revealed generating the most interest.
It's long time overdue for transparency.
Investigative journalist Gerald Posner disagrees that what remains is going to be revelatory.
We have 515 files that are withheld in full. So everybody thinks that must be where the treasure trove is. If there's a smoking gun, it's going to be in there.
But he says 499 of them are just tax files. Posner blames the CIA itself for enabling what have become some of the most enduring conspiracies in U.S. history.
This is what they're doing time and time again at the CIA, over-redacting, holding back on information which the American people have a right to see.
As for the remaining sealed documents in the RFK and MLK assassinations, intelligence agencies have another 30 days to deliver a plan on how to release those. Martin Luther King's family has asked to see the declassified files before they are revealed to the public. Back to you.
All right, Stephanie, thank you very much. Well, there's much more to come on this Friday edition of Morning News Now. Later in the hour, bad bet, that former translator for superstar slugger Shohei Ohtani, now sentenced over a gambling scheme that rocked the world of baseball. How long he's expected to spend behind bars. First, though, after the break, we'll take you to the Middle East, where the latest round of Israeli hostages are set to be released just hours from now. But what might this exchange look like? We're on the ground next. We're back now with the latest on that fragile ceasefire in Gaza. Later today, we are expecting to learn the names of the latest round of hostages set to be released tomorrow. It comes as Israel's defense minister says he has instructed the country's military to prepare a plan to allow Palestinians to voluntarily leave the Gaza Strip. For more, we are joined by NBC's Yasmin Nasugian. She's in Tel Aviv for us. Yasmin, good morning. Let's start with this expected hostage release tomorrow. What do we know about the terms of this exchange?
We don't know a lot. I think it's a little bit of a cat and mouse right now, Savannah. We have confirmation that it's going to be 3 men that, in fact, are going to be released. For all intents and purposes, there are 12 left that should be released between now and the end of phase 1, including 8 also who have been confirmed dead. At this moment, 79 remain in captivity, including 3 that were taken before October 7th. They were supposed to have begun negotiating phase 2 of the ceasefire deal earlier on this week. That has not yet happened. When I say it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, because of the rhetoric coming out Washington. I feel as if, and what we're hearing from local media as well, is that there may be a group of negotiators heading to Qatar this weekend, led by Shin Bet. But it seems as if they are waiting for this list to come out from Hamas of who exactly will be released this tomorrow, I should say. And if that happens and all goes smoothly, the release goes smoothly, the transfer goes smoothly, then, in fact, that negotiating group will head to Qatar to begin negotiating. What they negotiate is also in question, Savannah, as well, because we have seen some guidance that they've only been instructed or empowered to negotiate the rest of phase 1 of the ceasefire deal versus moving on to phase 2. One more thing I think is important to mention is they are encouraging negotiators to talk about releasing Shiri Bibas and her 2 children. You remember Yarden Bibas was one of the hostages that was released last weekend. His wife, Shiri Bibas, along with their 2 children, remains in captivity. We don't know the status of the children and the wife, hence why Israel is now encouraging negotiators to get the release of those 3 individuals along with the remaining hostages. But again, we won't know until those 3 names come out this evening.
And Yasmin, let's talk about something else that I mentioned just a moment ago. Israel's defense minister ordering the army to prepare this plan for Gazans who wish to leave the enclave voluntarily. Obviously, we know the destruction there. We also know that this is where these people call home. And this also comes, of course, after President Trump's remarks in which he said the U.S. may take over and develop the territory. What's the latest on this plan? What are you hearing from Israeli leadership? And do we have any notion of if this is of interest to some Gazans?
I mean, as of now, it's not. That's a fact. I mean, across the board, from Islamic militants to Hamas to the PA, I mean, we've talked about this over and over again over the last 48 to 72 hours. And then speaking to Palestinians on the ground in Gaza, our team there that is talking to individuals there, they don't want to leave. This is their national identity. This is their homeland. In spite of all of that, as you mentioned, there was a statement put out by the defense minister just yesterday saying that they want to prepare a plan. They want the IDF to prepare a plan when, in fact, or if, in fact, Palestinians choose to leave Gaza in the event that this transfer happens. You heard from the president yesterday as well that when fighting ends between Israel and Gaza, in fact, Gaza will be turned over to the United States. He put that out in a social media post just yesterday morning. I want to read for you a statement as that was part of the statement put out by the defense minister, saying countries such as Spain, Ireland, Norway, and others, which have falsely accused Israel over its actions in Gaza, are legally obligated to allow Gazans to enter their territory. Their hypocrisy will be exposed if they refuse. Meanwhile, countries like Canada, which has a structured immigration program, have previously expressed willingness to take in residents from Gaza. So if there's anything, Savannah, to compare this to, I feel as if it's a little bit like what happened in the United States with migrants entering from the southern border and then being bused north from governors in Florida and Texas. But of course, those migrants were wanting to be in the United States, whereas these Palestinians do not want to leave Gaza, Savannah.
All right, Yasmin, thank you very much. Let's get more international headlines now, starting with an update on the Pope's health from the Vatican. Raf Sanchez joins us with more on that and some other world news. Hey, Raf, good to see you. Morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Yeah, the Vatican is now confirming that what the Pope initially described as a strong cold is, in fact, bronchitis. Despite that, the pontiff is expected to keep to his planned schedule this weekend. The 88-year-old has suffered several bouts of ill health in recent years, including 2 falls in just the last couple of weeks. Voters in Ecuador are heading to the polls this Sunday, deciding whether to give the country's 37-year-old president a full term in office. Daniel Noboa, the country's youngest elected leader, is facing 15 other candidates, and a top election issue, crime. Ecuador continues to be racked by major violence. And finally, a new job for Britain's top Diplo cat. A black and white kitty named Palmerston had retired after several years at the UK's Foreign Office, but his owner has now been appointed governor of the British territory of Bermuda, and Palmerston is going with him. And Savannah, there is another cat at Downing Street called Larry, who I've met several times. He likes to come hang out with us in the press as we're standing there usually shivering in the British rain outside the Prime Minister's residence.
Hey, wow, Ralph, thank you for the reporting and the color from the ground. Appreciate it. Thank you. Coming up, we are counting down the hours to Super Bowl 59. After the break, we're heading to an electrified New Orleans with a preview of all the action. That's up next. Stay with us. We are back now with big news in baseball. The former interpreter for Shohei Ohtani has been sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison. Ipe Mizuhara was sentenced to 57 months Thursday after admitting to stealing millions of dollars from the Los Angeles Dodgers superstar to pay off gambling losses. In addition to that prison time, Mizuhara will also have to pay more than $18 million in restitution to Ohtani and to the IRS. You might remember last year he pled guilty to bank and tax fraud. Mizuhara, who was born in Japan but raised in the U.S., could also face deportation at the end of his sentence. Well, now let's get to the growing excitement for Super Bowl 59. It is just 2 days away, and this year's matchup will feature, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles up against the defending champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. And with a performance from Kendrick Lamar, the stage is set for a night to remember in New Orleans. Here's NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung with a look at everything to look forward to this Super Bowl Sunday.
Hey there. Bourbon Street is not the only place buzzing. This city is absolutely electric at this point in the week. If you are trying to score a ticket to the big game, though, buyer beware. StubHub says the average ticket sold at this point just north of $7,000. When you've got the Eagles with redemption on their mind and the Chiefs in pursuit of history, odds makers are saying Kansas City is going to edge this one out by 1.5 points, but I'd say the safe bet is on a thriller.
With the Super Bowl just 2 days away, the Chiefs and Eagles are locking in.
I like to win the game.
All this build-up, it makes you ready to go on Super Bowl Sunday.
And here in New Orleans, there's already some hardware being handed out. Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen named this season's MVP. But no prize is more coveted than the Lombardi Trophy. And Philly fans in Chiefs Kingdom are making their case.
Eagles, not even close. We'll go Chiefs. How many yards do you think Saquon's going to run for on Sunday? At least 300.
Even households are divided.
We had 2 jerseys, so he got that one and I got this one.
Anticipation is also building for hip-hop superstar Kendrick Lamar to strike a chord at halftime. Fresh off collecting 5 Grammys last weekend.
I want that energy to, ooze out into the televisions and to the people that's in that building.
Any temptation at halftime to sneak out a little early and see Kendrick Lamar?
Man, I ain't gonna lie, I'm such a big Kendrick Lamar fan, but I'm not gonna do that.
At the league's playground for fans, the NFL Experience, fans are the stars of their own games, attempting Saquon Barkley-like backwards hurdles and spiking the football slightly better than Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick, you got something to learn.
A Chiefs win on Sunday will mean NFL history, the first team to ever three-peat as Super Bowl champs.
What does that opportunity to make history mean to you?
We don't take for granted the opportunity to play in the Super Bowl. It's so special. We've been blessed the last 5 or 6 years to have this opportunity a lot.
And while the Eagles don't have Jason Kelce on their team anymore, is Mama Kelce still torn on who to root for?
I would hope she didn't have the split jersey this time. I think she'll be wearing red.
And Travis also confirms his mom, Donna, is bringing her famous cookies to the Big Easy. This city is expecting 125,000 people to descend upon it, including President Trump. It feels like most of them are already here. And authorities assure us they are ready for everything with 2,900 security personnel in place. The governor saying the biggest show on earth is going to go off without a hitch. So the countdown continues. Back to you.
All right, Kaylee, thank you so much.
And the Chiefs and Eagles aren't the only ones with glory on the line at the Super Bowl. For many, the stakes go beyond just picking a winner. Some bets depend on games played far from New Orleans. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock takes a closer look at the soaring popularity of the parlay.
Aren't you a little too old to be playing football?
Wait, what?
They want somebody that can run a 40, not somebody that is 40.
You've no doubt seen the commercials featuring huge stars like LeBron James, Kevin Hart, and Charles Barkley.
When you're betting on your favorite players, it helps to think like your favorite player. Looking good, young Chuck.
Increasingly referencing a particular word, parlay.
This is you, and this is your first hunch of the season.
It's parlay time.
The term might sound a little fancy, but simply means stacking a series of bets that all have to be right. Appealing to people like Jamie Mather, a father of two from Southwest Virginia, who works in digital marketing and a couple of years ago caught the parlay fever.
I made a little account called Plunder the Under. That was my guy.
He became so passionate, in fact, Mather created an alter ego on X, sharing tips on how to win big betting on sports, with the parlay a centerpiece of that. Bettors can wager on custom combinations, from how many touchdowns Eagles star running back Saquon Barkley might score in the Super Bowl, to whether Travis Kelce will propose to Taylor Swift if the Chiefs claim victory. The key is that all legs of the parlay have to click for the bettor to cash in.
I think why they're popular is sort of that the lure of the big hit, the big lottery. You know, I'm going to put 8 plays together, to try to win. I'm going to turn $10 into $1,000, that sort of thing.
In the simplest of terms, if you put $10 down on a traditional 50-50 bet, you'd get back $10 if you win. But if you stack together 7 50-50 bets in a parlay, then your return would be $1,200. But the odds of winning in that scenario are around 0.8%. That's a big reason why sportsbooks can bank more money on parlays, even if the prospect of winning them is tantalizing.
Parlays offer bigger odds, bigger payouts, and so that's one of the reasons, Sam, that I think parlays are so popular.
Matthew Berry of NBC Sports has been in the gaming biz for a long time, starting as a fantasy football household name. But on his segment before NBC Sunday Night Football, he now routinely highlights his favorite parlays.
And certainly it's a part of Football Night in America. I give out a parlay every Sunday night. They're insanely popular. People really love them.
Take multiple bets from a single game and combine them into one parlay.
With the biggest sportsbook players like DraftKings even offering explainers, a same-game parlay means letting you choose bets from the same game, as it sounds, like the Super Bowl. FanDuel tells us that 90% of its same-game parlays are for $30 or less, with well over half no more than $5. But slim chances don't seem to scare bettors. 3 of the 38 states plus D.C. that allow sports betting, New Jersey, Colorado, and Illinois, offer some eye-opening numbers. In Colorado, parlays made up the largest share of the pie of all bets in December 2024, tied with bets on just pro football. And even more revealing, in New Jersey, parlays well outpaced any single sporting event, with a much higher win rate, too. As for Jamie Mather, he says parlays have opened up gambling to a new generation ready to win.
I think sports gambling back in the day was people that cracked their kneecaps and hiding in the corners and old men and things like that. And now it's become a younger game, a hipper game,
Meaning more chances on cashing in, no matter how long the odds.
Our thanks to Sam Brock for that breakdown. Experts say bettors love parlays because they can wager less for a shot at a bigger win. But there is a catch. The more legs you add, the higher the payout and the harder it is to cash in.
Coming up, America's labor market back in focus this morning.
After the break, we're going to dig into the first major jobs report, not only of 2025, but of the second Trump administration. And we can't talk numbers without bringing in our economic dream team. NBC's Brian Chung, Investopedia.
Brian gets a gold star. Okay, Caleb did it too.
They're up
Friday. Let's bobble.
Back with some breaking economic data.
The employment report is out, and the U.S. economy added 143,000 jobs in January, less than expected. The unemployment rate, though, came in at 4%.
Here to discuss, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung and Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver, our economic dream team. Good morning to both of you. Brian, let's start with you at the big board. Just walk us through the numbers, how they compare with previous months, and just what we're seeing by industry.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Just to add a little bit of context, those figures which we just got from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, some good news that the unemployment rate did tick down to 4% in the month of January. You'll see that is a little bit of an increase from what we saw earlier in 2023, but certainly an improvement when you see those 4.2% figures we had seen only a few months ago. But look, when it comes to that headline number, 143,000 jobs added in the month of January. That's actually a little bit below what we were expecting going into this jobs report. Those on Wall Street had been forecasting something something like 169,000 jobs added in the month. So certainly a little bit disappointing on that front. There were revisions, by the way, to all the prior months. We can get into that a little bit later. But when we break down the categories for where we saw the job gains in the month, the healthcare industry adding 44,000 jobs almost. And then leisure and hospitality. This is an interesting one. These are the bars and restaurants that drove a lot of the post-pandemic gains. We saw a contraction in this industry, losing about 3,000 jobs. And then manufacturing, this is a big one as well, adding 3,000 jobs as well. So again, a lot of interesting threads from this January jobs report.
Wow, what a gain there in healthcare. Caleb, let's bring you in here to talk about what these numbers really mean. Put it in context. Health of our economy, health of jobs market.
I wouldn't focus too much on the lower than expected number, 143,000. That's actually a normal rate of job growth, a replacement level. So when we get 250, 300,000 job gains, that is way above average. So this is kind of normal. We expected this, but wages are interesting here. Another jump in wages, now at a 4.1% annual rate. People are getting paid more than the rate of inflation right now, if you look at those numbers. But when you look at where the job declines were, this is interesting because it's going to change. Mining, quarrying, oil and gas extraction. All of those sectors are now in the Trump administration's favor. We'll probably see a lot more hiring in those sectors going forward. But looking forward as well, we'll probably see bigger job losses because of some of the government buyouts, but also some of the contractors associated with the government. This actual 143,000 number might be a high watermark for a while.
So, Brian, obviously right now we've been talking a lot about the Trump administration offering these buyouts to federal employees. We wouldn't see that in a January jobs report. We could see it in the future. But talk more about how much of the workforce we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's an important point you bring up, Joe, because this period that was surveyed for the January numbers, they came before inauguration. So we would not have seen the impact of anything Trump administration related. But I want to set the tone for what we'll watch for in the future jobs report. When you take a look at, again, these are not changes. This is just the straight level of how many federal employees there are. If you exclude the Postal Service, 2.4 million federal government workers. As a share of the overall workforce, it's only 1.5%. But the Trump administration and Elon Musk, of course, want these numbers to go down. If we do see indeed that case of 60,000, let's just go with that as the estimate right now for how many buyouts there could be. Well, 60,000 as a fraction of the 2.4 million really actually isn't all that much, but 60,000 on a monthly basis would certainly make that headline number go down, which is the reason why, as you mentioned just with Caleb, that could really set a high watermark for the 140,000 or so that we saw added in the month in January.
Absolutely. Caleb, give it to us. Countdown.
Countdown's about 41 days and 5 hours and 32 minutes. The Fed's not doing anything for a while. The Fed sees this labor market and says there's plenty of jobs out there. Wage growth is not that extensive. It's growing a little bit. So there's plenty of jobs out there. The economy's growing. We got that GDP report from last year. So I don't think they're going to do anything until June, unless they are forced to do so. That would be very interesting. We're going to see this dynamic play out at the next Fed meeting in March.
Brian, jobs report, we also see something that's known as the standard annual revisions. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, this is something very unique to just the January jobs report. Now, they basically look back at the previous year of all the data that we talk about on a monthly basis, and they revise it to reflect more complete data that they get from unemployment insurance claims. They really want to make sure that the data is as accurate as it can be, even after they've already published it. So in this January report, they did look back at the previous years of all the job gains that they had originally said were added, and they actually did say that it was overstated by almost 600,000 jobs. Now, again, as a representation of the overall jobs force, that impact is not all that substantial. And in fact, when it comes to the yearly revisions that we see when it comes to these January jobs report in years past, those revisions have only accounted for about +1 or -0.1 of the total employment over the last 10 years. So you're going to see some chatter over this. Oh, my gosh, there were almost 600,000 fewer jobs created than we thought in the 2024. But again, I want to point out that as a percentage of the overall workforce, it's not as much. But certainly, again, these annual revisions really kind of solidifying and making sure that the data that we had reported over the last year or so is truly the best because of that more updated data.
Caleb, real quick, just distill this. What's it mean for consumers?
Yeah, there's 6.8 million unemployed people out there. There's 7.5 million jobs available. If you just lost your job, you're looking for a job, there are jobs available. Brian showed you the sectors that are hiring. The economy is moving along. It's not a bonfire, but it's a nice barbecue. Economy's growing right now, and there are plenty of jobs.
That's a new one. I like that.
Good image heading into the weekend. All right. Brian, Caleb, thank you both. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to stay on financial news for you. If you're rocking an iPhone SE, a brand new design might be on its way from Apple.
CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other money headlines. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yeah, that's right. So Apple plans to unveil a long-awaited overhaul of the iPhone SE as soon as next week, as it looks to modernize the lower-cost model in an effort to spur sales. Now, Bloomberg reports Apple is unlikely to hold a launch event, choosing to reveal the phone on its website instead. Now, the current version of the SE came out in 2022, and it's the only phone that still has a home button and doesn't have Face ID. Databases from the U.S. Census Bureau appeared to be unavailable to the public yesterday. Several economists telling CNBC they were unable to access data from the Bureau's website, but some were able to use workarounds to view the information. Now, a few of those data sets include information on voter demographics, population changes by state and small businesses. The Census Bureau hasn't responded to CNBC's request for comment. The agency's website was among several government pages that briefly went dark last week after the White House ordered the removal of language related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, well, the third time may not be the charm, as interest appears to be waning for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Game Time, that's a site for last-minute tickets, says the lowest price tickets for Sunday have dropped about 45% since last Friday. Now, they're still not cheap at just under $3,500, but that is well below the $8,700 just before the game last year, guys.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
You got it.
I've heard rumblings that I look like someone from TV, but it's just, maybe it's this Bemis person, I don't know. I don't watch much television. I have an incredibly busy life.
Yeah, I'm very busy too. And this is honestly the first time I've ever heard that I look like this butthead person.
So that SNL sketch from last season had everyone laughing, even the actors. And it highlights one of the show's secrets to success, its incredible makeup department. When you think makeup, you might think foundation, mascara, lipstick, and yes, they do that stuff. But the 20 artists on SNL's Emmy-winning makeup team are also responsible for bald caps, facial hair, and those intricate prosthetics. Most weeks, they don't even start making them until Thursday, sometimes even Friday. And once the show starts, well, they need to get all that makeup on and off in a couple minutes.
Greetings. The Coneheads were just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to SNL's dramatic transformations.
They're eating the pitch. They're eating the day.
From real-life politicians...
Just stand here and look lucid.
...to fictional fantasies.
Why are you staring at me?
It all starts in the makeup lab.
This is history.
This is the mold room for NBC and SNL. There's stuff here that's older than I am.
Here, the head of SNL's makeup department, Louis Zakarian, finds famous faces.
The Rock.
So-called life casts of every host and cast member.
This one's Eddie Murphy, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's Eddie Murphy.
That's an icon right there.
That's an icon.
They even hang on the walls.
This is kind of like a Mount Rushmore for SNL, right?
It is.
For 30 years now, Louis has used them to build elaborate prosthetics. He did Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer in the 90s.
Your world frightens and confuses me.
This iconic duo from the 90s.
You two really don't know that you look like Beavis and Butthead.
That one went viral.
It went crazy.
Crunchy, crusty.
For cast member Sarah Sherman,
nobody noticed I got my eyes replaced.
Makeup is a vital part of her creative process.
I'm the makeup department stalker.
This season, she worked with Louis to create Nosferatu.
Good evening, Colin.
Once I have really long vampire fingers, then and only then can I finally actually figure out what the voice is of the character.
From fingers to noses.
I'm gluing on this wonderful little dog nose.
That looks comfortable.
It actually is.
On show day, you got to do this as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing. I don't see the edges, and he does it in 2 minutes. It's insane.
Louis and his team recently attached these snippers to 10 actors in 10 minutes for this dog park sketch.
Hi.
Hi. How do you describe the energy on a Saturday night?
It's choreographed mayhem. It's like a pig room. Everybody knows what they have to do. Everybody knows where they have to be at any given moment. And we can get them in and out of that chair within minutes.
After playing a pup, Sarah quickly changed again.
So I had to turn from a dog into a 92-year-old woman. So they had to, like, take...
Your mind is clearly blown.
Yes, and it's happening to me, and I don't even know how it's happening.
It all begins with those life casts.
Here we go. Very painless.
Now made with high-tech scanners that map your face in minutes and come to life in a 3D printer. Much easier than it used to be.
This is one of the original cone head molds.
Though the old ways certainly stir up nostalgia.
When you were younger, is the cone heads one of the things that inspired you?
Yeah, and now to have them in my hands and be able to reproduce them, kind of one of those dream come true moments, you know what I mean?
A dream you just can't make up.
So when creating a look, Louis said Lauren Michaels always wants to still be able to tell who the actor is underneath the makeup. You saw a scan in there for my face. It only took like 45 seconds to
This is
scan
crazy.
it. And this is what it looks like right here, the final thing. So every cast member, the moment they're hired, they go and get a scan, so they have this made. And if you're a host, you come in like right away as soon as you're into 30 Rock. They make this, and then they can build all the prosthetics and everything off of this, which is absolutely incredible. And they used to have to, it used to be this huge, long, messy procedure. Now it's as simple as can be thanks to technology. By the way, if you want to catch the SNL anniversary
you have way better
special,
eyebrows in real life. FYI.
they're a little bushy on there. Now I know what I look like without hair. That special, Sunday, February 16th. That's a week from this Sunday, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and on Peacock. Already starting to hear some of the stars who are going to be a part of it. John Mulaney, Pedro Pascal, Kim Kardashian, so many people. It's going to be exciting.
And I just think about the audience.
Oh, my goodness.
It's crazy.
All right, coming up, if it's Friday, that can mean only one thing.
It's time for our weekly can't miss list. It's right around the corner. Your full rundown of the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment. Grab your popcorn. It's up next. Welcome back, Rich. She's already a billionaire, a fashion mogul, and a 9-time Grammy winner. Well, now Rihanna can add another title to her long list of accolades, Smurf. Look at that perfect picture we have of it. She is voicing Smurfette in the latest Smurfs movie, as well as writing original songs and producing. Paramount Pictures dropped the first full trailer for the movie yesterday. The cast also includes James Corden, John Goodman, and Octavia Spencer, and the movie hits the big screen this July. I feel like as stars
channeling Smurf.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That
hat,
picture was like so on it.
It was
and
meant to be.
I feel like as stars start to have kids, then they're like into these projects.
Right, they're like,
you know?
we'll do the kid stuff.
Cool. Yeah. All right, speaking of new movies coming out in theaters, it's Friday. That means it's time for your can't miss list.
That's right. A look at all of the films and shows coming out this weekend that you need to see.
Today, we have Sloan Glass. She's an entertainment journalist and host of the American Homicide podcast. Sloan, great to have you with us.
Thank you. I can't believe our first Rihanna new music is coming from the Smurfs movie.
Wait, so that's so true. Yeah, actually,
we've been
great
waiting
point.
so long for an album.
No one bet on that.
Point. See, she knows what she's talking about. All right, let's start with this movie, Love Hurts. What do we need to know?
I'm so excited for this. When people talk about genre bending, nothing applies more that term than we have with Love Hurts. And this is starring Kiwi Kwan, who is just so fantastic. What a career, right?
Yeah.
Disappear after being this huge child star. This is a 40-year anniversary of The Goonies because we also have Sean Astin in it. And Kwan plays a real estate agent, who's a former hitman, hiding in Milwaukee. His past comes back to haunt him. It's also being billed as a really quirky rom-com. A lot of amazing things to check out in this movie. I know
an old football star in there too, you know? You got a little beast mode. All right. Another film that looks at dealing with the past is called Bring Them Down. It's about two rival farmers in Ireland. Much more serious topic. Tell us about this one.
Much more serious. This movie is a psychological thriller of sorts that deals with two rival families where they just take things to an extreme. Gets very violent. It's starring Barry Keoghan, which everyone knows from Saltburn, or maybe Sabrina Carpenter's
ex-boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend, thank you. I know you're a huge Swiftie, and lots of crossover there. But this is actually my favorite genre. This is horrible people in beautiful places.
That's a good, I like that genre too.
Yeah.
It's a
Also,
first-time filmmaker.
This one and this next one we're going to talk about, they're just like interesting themes for thrillers. You know what I mean? Like this Irish farm rivalry and then also this parent-teacher conference psychological thriller, Armand.
Well, all parent-teacher conferences are psychological thrillers. This one is definitely heavier, darker. You're not going to get a lot from the Armand trailer, but you will be left feeling really unsettled. So it's effective. This is a movie that I think you have to be kids like to say locked in for, because it's
thumbs
just
down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a Norwegian film getting a lot of press and accolades. And if you are in the right mindset to go into that deeper, darker place, this is a movie to watch this weekend.
Ooh, all right.
Let's talk about a series that's really feeling timely right now. It's called Clean Slate, stars Laverne Cox, and George Wallace plays her father.
Comedy icons, right? This movie looks, miniseries looks so much fun. It's really joyful. The two of them getting together, and this George Wallace plays this kind of hardened, old school car washer in Alabama. And when the child, who he had called son for their entire life, returns after 17 years as Desiree, the two have a lot of rebuilding to do, but it comes from a place of joy and love, very funny, and it was developed by the late Norman Lear. So, I mean, absolutely
amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, something else that we can stream. It's a Netflix film, Apple Cider Vinegar. What's this?
This is my favorite trailer of the year.
Oh, wow.
I cannot wait for this Netflix miniseries. I'm not sure if you guys remember Belle Gibson, the Australian influencer, scam artist. She was a pseudoscience pusher, real triple threat these days with all those things. And she had told the world that she had cancer and was using her wellness techniques to overcome her cancer. And she was lying about the entire thing. She had that viral interview with 60 Minutes Australia where she just could not stop compulsively lying.
Yeah, that's one that's that's the topic and genre that's popular right now. We got 30
True-ish.
seconds here, but this one, if nothing else, has the best title. Breaking Dad, Britain's Unlikeliest Drug Dealer. It's a documentary on BritBox.
Yeah, so this came out last year in the UK, and we're finally getting it now. I think that this is going to be the series Monday. People are going to talk about binging it. And it just looks, I mean, it's an incredible story, right? Unlikely drug dealer. This person in London was dealing coins and other things. They kind of have that aesthetic about them. It's the early aughts scene in London, lots of parties. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good true crime show.
All right.
Sloan Glass, lots of good stuff. Great to meet you. Great to have you on with us. And happy watching, everybody.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.